Welcome to the Cincy Postcast. I am your host, Kevin Wallace, and before we get into this episode, we're going to tell you about our sponsor, Streetside Brewery. Located in historic Columbia, Tusculum, Streetside Brewery is the perfect mix of local watering hole and modern craft beer brewery. They have 24 beers on tap, and I am happy to attest that I have yet to have a bad beer from these guys. On Tuesday nights, they have pint nights with limited edition glassware, and they actually will take $1 off your refills all night. And also, you can catch their next Premier League morning on February 4th when Arsenal takes on Liverpool. That's at 11:30 a.m. And just for listeners of the Postcast, if you mention the Postcast at the bar, they are going to take $1 off of your beer, and you let them know that we sent you their way. Find them at 4003 Eastern Avenue or in the fridge of wherever you're picking up your next beer. So again, a huge thank you to Streetside Brewery for sponsoring the Postcast. And boy, do we have a very full episode for you. In part one, I am so excited about this. It is a conversation with Tom Bogert. If you follow MLS, you should know Tom. He is the breaking news man for The Athletic. He has all of the latest transfer news. Fantastic conversation with him, a little behind the scenes as to how he works, and we touch on plenty of FCC stuff. I think you're really, really going to enjoy this conversation. In part two, it's a news roundup around MLS and a little bit of the world and how some new rules in the Premier League may be impacting MLS. What's the latest at the Supreme Court in U.S. soccer, and Apple bidding on Club World Cup, the news? Interesting. Then in part three, it's the Colorado Rapids visiting FC Cincinnati. We preview and predict it all on the Postcast. Joining me to talk about all of that and more, of course, I'm joined by the Chief and Grayson, but very special for us, so we're moving it right on up to segment one. We are joined by the one and only Tommy Scoops. I think it is legally required that you have his tweet notifications on if you're a fan of this league. Welcome to the Postcast, Tom Bogert. How are you doing today?
What's going on, boys? I can't compete with Chief, so maybe call me Sergeant or something. I don't know. I'm trying to come quick on that.
Scoops isn't bad, though. Scoops isn't bad.
That's true. The tweet notifications thing is funny where, like, I think about it every time I do a dumb tweet when it's, like, me getting a goddamn Sir Minty cape from Charlotte, and, like, someone goes, oh, tweet notification from Tom. Must be some big news. What the hell is this? Is this a cape? So I always like to have that thought.
You should always make sure you start every tweet with breaking, even if it's the most mundane thing ever. Because, I mean, it is breaking news. It just might not be the news you're interested in hearing.
That is funny. You're almost pigeonholed into exclusively MLS because, yeah, you probably do get a fair number of angry comments when a Knicks tweet goes out or something and somebody's not too interested.
They know what they signed up for. The only time I felt bad was I was covering MLS Cup, and, like, I was like, I don't know, should I be, like, tweeting, like, updates to the game or whatever? I was like, isn't that what real life, like, day-to-day reporters do? And then, like, I did it for, I think, the first goal. And, like, 15 people either texted me or replied. I was like, dude, what the hell? I have your notifications. I'm like, the feed is behind. I was like, oh, shit. Like, I'm going to not do that. And then I was like, yeah, I don't need to be doing that. There's 15 other people giving the score, and everybody who cares is watching the game. What am I doing?
No, it's the equivalent of, like, filming the concert with your phone when you're there. It's like, everyone that needs to see this is already here. I'm never watching this back again. I'm going to live in the moment right here.
Oh, God. Well, no, I am very honored to have you on today. This is, I saw on Twitter earlier, your 1-year anniversary with The Athletic. That's very special. We're also one day after the close of the MLS primary window. Like I said, I feel very honored that we even have some of your time on today. Let me ask you this. Promotion and relegation for MLS sports writers. You start at MLSsoccer.com. You get promoted to The Athletic. Agree or disagree?
I would have agreed in previous jobs. Now that I'm here, you got to close the system. No more pro rel. Now that I'm not there, I don't want to get relegated.
That's our feeling in Cincinnati about pro rel anyway, too. It's like, no, I don't want to go down. Don't even put this on the table.
Yeah, you finished dead the last 3 years in a row and tell me you want relegation, all right? Oh, no, you are you are a very fun one to follow, like I said, in MLS. You're living that multi-phone life. I got to ask, at what point do you realize you're the breaking transfer guy? Is this a niche that you tried to carve out, or did it fall into your lap?
Kind of the latter, but more that like I had to be pushed to it almost against my will. When I was at MLSsoccer.com, I had a wonderful editor who I owe so much to. He gave me my first chance there, and he saw something in me that I didn't even see. Like, he's like, dude, you're really good at the developing relationships and all this stuff, like all that stuff. He's like, you know what, this season, I don't want you to work any match nights. He's like, I want you to just focus on like breaking news and stuff. And like a little bit of ego, I was like, no, like ego and fear. Like, one, fear is you're only as good as your sources. And it's like, what if I don't actually develop sources, right? Like, then I'm just not like less than like average, right? Like, that's complete failure. And second, like the ego part of it is like, nah, dude, like I thought that because I had an opinion on a game that mattered, like analysis, right? Like, no, like people like, that's good enough to be the best or whatever, right? And he's like, dude, just trust me, do it for 6 months. And he's like, if you hate it, we'll change it back. But he's like, just trust me. Fine, all right. Then within a couple of months, I was like, oh yeah, this is so much better for me in terms of what I'm good at and what I can do. Like, the ceiling is so much higher versus if I was just like, well, since he's playing with a back three and the left center back, like, I'm not smart enough for that, right? Like I can't touch Matt Doyle, Joe Lowry, and like some of the other brilliant tactics writers and stuff out there. Like, it was, again, my whole career confluence of hard work and good luck, right? Like, none of this happens without hard work and at least kind of an ability, or at least the ability to confuse people into thinking I'm not an idiot. But the good luck of like, I didn't have this idea. And furthermore, I tried to push back against it. Right. Like, so I don't know. It's funny to look back and just be thankful.
How much of your success do you owe to the fact that they have increased the number of characters with Twitter that makes it easier to explain how transactions work in MLS as part of the breaking news cycle? Because I have to think that back when it was just 140 characters, trying to fit in all of the GAM and international and designated player terminology, it probably got real hard to break the news in that sort of a restrictive format.
Yeah, I do like it where it is. But if you ever see me doing a 17 paragraph tweet with a checkbook, just shoot me in the head. If I write an article on a Twitter post, just be like, dude, you're a boomer. I'm sorry, bro. No, social media ain't for you. Go find Facebook.
Let me ask you this. What do you hate more? Having to explain MLS soccer rules to the Euro snobs that jump in the mentions, or MLS transfer content aggregators that are just copying and pasting everybody else?
Probably the latter, because while I fervently disagree and feel like I have to say the same things in like to bad faith arguments, and like I just need to grow up and learn to just not do that. What's the point? But at least they truly believe what they're doing, and like right, wrong, or indifferent, that's their original thoughts or original-ish. Yeah, it depends. Like I don't dislike every aggregation crate because like there is a role for that, but the ones who go out of the way to do the very most minimal credit, or like I've seen like some like smaller ones that are trying to get started in like the aggregating game, more or less just copy it. Like, I'm like, dude, you use the exact wording and spacing that I did. Like, at least pretend to try to like change it up, man. I was like, if you're just copy, just retweet, bro. Just retweet. You're not adding anything. You're not like. So again, I don't want to sound like I'm insane, and like there is plenty of room. There is room for aggregators. It is useful, but like you got to do it tastefully, and you gotta give as much of a tip to the person with the actual news.
So kind of adjacent to the aggregators is, so like with FC Cincinnati, we've had a little bit of success the last couple of years, and it seems like more and more we're just kind of thrown in as links to random players around the world. Are there any like tips and tricks you could give fans to say, like, if a random account you've never seen before pops up and it says FC Cincinnati and whatever other teams are all in on this player, what are some like quick like heuristics we can look at and say, like, this is less likely to be legitimate or not?
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head. Just like use your brain, trust your brain, right? Like if it's not and this isn't an extensive list. I don't want to accidentally forget anybody and be disrespectful. But if it's not like me, Pat, or Laurel around like Cincy, or the other names that like Tenorio, Carlisle, like whatever, all the guys that like wherever, right? Like CL Merlot in South America, and like Fabrizio Romano and like a couple other people in Europe, just automatically don't believe it. And then even if it's true, one of us will get it soon. Like I was lucky. Like I did like I'm a huge Liverpool fan. And I remember like I used to be the guy getting up with every dumb link. Like didn't matter to me if it was, ESPN, the Associated Press, or just like Liverpool fans 12.com, right? Like I was just a moron. And then I realized after like, this is the dumbest thing that I could be doing. Like, why am I getting worked up or like thinking about things that are just completely untrue? It's like, again, like find the 5 writers that you trust the most and just wait until they say it.
And so being one of the writers that is on the trustworthy list, you obviously have sources around the world. You have sources around the league. How many different times a day are you fed information where you're like, this seems like this is nonsense, or this seems like this has been basically, how many do you have to go through to get an actual genuine piece of news? What's the wheat to chaff ratio for you, for a reporter like you?
Not that bad, honestly, because I think, and again, like what I try to just be kind of authentic and direct to a fault, right? But like, I pride myself on, like, there's plenty of people who don't like me and they have plenty of reasons not to like me, right? But like, you can make your own decision on me fairly quickly, and you can, like, you're going to be right, whether you do or don't like me. And that's kind of the way that I present myself with sources and stuff. So most of the people I'm closest with, like, don't spew nonsense. And like, there's some people that like definitely spin, like everybody has a spin on things, but there's some that are like, it is just so clear, like when it's like whatever. So like, thankfully, I trust the people that I trust and will run, not like, well, like, okay, like I'm going to start calling people assuming that this is absolutely true. And then there's a lot of like, there's a couple of people, it's like, hey, that doesn't sound right. And I don't, I'm not going to, the next person I call is not going to be, dude, I've heard this. I know this. It's going to be like, somebody I don't really trust said this. What do you like? It changes the tenor of how I chase things.
That makes sense. I'm curious too that so to maybe pivot a little closer to FC Cincinnati, when there are rumors out there, and let's say even substantiated rumors about a player like in FC Cincinnati's case, Kevin Kelsy, a guy that's made like, I don't know, as 3 professional minutes in Ukraine. How do you go about, I don't know, assessing these players or even finding anything out about these players? Is this word of mouth with sources? Do you have the highest tier Y Scout account? What does that look like for you?
I wish. That's just expensive, man. We have one at the Athletic, and it's like constantly, but you have to like book in advance because, like, again, we have a lot of brilliant athletics, tactics, writers and stuff. So like, it's getting full use out of it. So you have to like, but I can't just be like, oh, I'm going to go on Y Scout now because it's always booked. But yeah, so it's a combination of, look, if I'm talking to a Cincinnati source, obviously they're going to tell me what they like about the player because they're signing him, and that's not them spitting anything to me. That's just what they believe. But so it's a combination of trusting what people tell me, and maybe not going a step too far, or like going 100% of what they say, just kind of understanding where the biases are. Player profile, like the FB Ref does like scouting stuff. So that helps me. Like, I'm not going to be like, oh, this guy's either great or terrible, but it's like, oh, this is the kind of player he is. So that helps. A guy like Kevin Kelsy, like you said, it's difficult because he's played, I think over the last 2 years, like 1,000 minutes, like he's 19, right? Like, so he's not obviously not the finished product. And it's like, he's got a really good goal scoring rate for those minutes that he plays. And that's encouraging. And then I'll try to push back on myself. It's like, well, if he's not playing regularly, he's not playing probably in Shakhtar's biggest, most difficult games. So is he playing when they're rotating against whatever the 12th place Ukrainian league team is? And where would they fall in like MLS opposition? So yeah, it's a lot of unknowns, but the fun part about MLS, and like I generally am optimistic with new signings, because I don't know, it's less fun to just be like, this guy sucks, he's going to suck. Like, I don't know, I just don't want to go about it that way. But the fun part is about MLS, like, dude, there's like thousands and thousands of players out there that could be really good in MLS. Like Manchester City and Liverpool, they can sign 50 players maybe that would make their team better. Maybe, right? Maybe total of the world. MLS clubs, it's like 2,500 like per position. One like sporting director was telling me that once. He's like, yeah, like it makes it fun. It makes it interesting, but it's like, it's also different and like difficult. So I don't know. So that's why for me, it's like, yeah, sure. Like maybe he wasn't playing a shark. Like, hell, Carlos Steele is one of the best players in the league. I think he had like 0 goals at Aston Villa. Like,
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like it doesn't like I think that he was a better player than he showed at Villa, but it just goes to show that even like when you get stats, you can't like be like, oh, this guy sucks. Like you can try to say maybe overvalued or undervalued or whatever it is, but for the most part, I try to give benefit of the doubt. Like I was probably the last person being like, well, if Jurgen Locadia gets a goal, maybe they will trigger his purchase option. I don't know.
Hey, there's still plenty of people in Cincinnati that think over a long enough time span, he would have panned out. Okay, so
just got to work with Pat Noonan.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably something to be said for that. I've often wondered what the 2020 team would have looked like with Pat Noonan at the helm.
I mean, hell, Yuya Kubo is now the leading goal scorer on the team, and he was the guy brought into the same window with Jurgen Locadia. Timing is everything.
He's finally back to being a DP forward. The life cycle is complete. Back up, right wing back, left wing back. Now he's back to being a forward. It's incredible.
I believe he was the lead scorer in 2020.
He was, with 3 goals.
Yeah, me too.
So believe it or not, under Jaap Stam, a potential game day roster could have included Alvaro Barrial, Brenner, Vasquez, Locadia, Kubo,
Acosta.
and Lucho Acosta. And this team could not score a goal.
Incredible, right?
Pretty wild.
So to go back to continue on building with this idea of like tracking players and signings, does it make it more hard with your job that there is such a huge player pool that could come to MLS versus, like you said, if you're covering the Premier League, it's a much smaller window of players and teams you need to be aware of when it comes to knowing things, knowing places, knowing agents, knowing everything that you would need to do your job.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why, like, dude, it's why it's easier to like be at the front of outgoing signings because outgoing transfers, rather, like, you know who to ask about. And like you said, you know all that's going on. It's like, dude, so hell, even the Kevin Kelsy example, to make sure it's tied to Cincy still. The rumor first came out about a month ago, and I was talking to sources, and like the picture that I got was that Shakhtar were being very unreasonable, is probably how I would correctly describe it. Like, they weren't even negotiating. They were like, he's an integral squad player that we cannot possibly lose right now. He's played like 400 minutes this season. Are you kidding me?
He's in a competitive minute this year.
Dude, and I'm talking to like one of my sources, and it's like, dude, like, how do you negotiate with that? And I'm like, hey, you don't, right? And so that was the last time I asked about it, because I was like, there's no way that, like, if that's what they're like. So they ended up, and even talking to people like after the news came out this weekend, and like when I was getting more details and info on it, I was like, what the hell happened? They're like, I don't know. Like, we didn't say anything new. Like, they just changed their mind again. And it's like, I was like, was it really just a loan fee? He's like, it's like, yeah, it's not like they were offering, like, it's not like that was out of zero loan fee to 700,000 day overnight. It was like, yeah, I don't know, man. I have no idea. So it's like, yeah, just say yes before they change their mind again. I don't know. Get the paperwork filed.
So in your write-up on the window, you mentioned Pavel Buka as being one of the low-key best signings in MLS. I'm curious how you would judge Chris Albright's job this entire window, considering he has what feels like, made over an entire roster here.
Yeah, look, so it's, most importantly, it is extraordinarily difficult to get to the pinnacle to win a trophy. That's what people do this job for. That's what fans, that's what we're all here for, is trophies, right? Like, so I don't want to go past that quickly, because that's first and foremost. Even if you suck the 4 years after that, you got the trophy, you have the hardware, you have the parade. It is harder to stay at the top, particularly in MLS and like salary cap league, but like particularly with MLS. Vasquez out, Barrial out, Yersa Mosquera, Junior Moreno, Santi Arias. 5 starters, 3 of which completely irreplaceable on their salary cap number. You are not getting a Brandon Vasquez for his salary cap number. Yeah. Like, maybe Luca Oriano can be Alvaro Barrial, but like, I don't believe he's not U22 initiative, right? Like, the value that they had in those players, Yersa Mosquera, phenomenal 1-year sign, just very incredible, like, talent identification and deal making. Like, I'm not knocking them because he's not back and it's difficult to replace him, because like there like, that was an opportunistic signing, and the fact that they got 1 year was 1 year too many probably for his talent level, and that was an awesome signing. And they turned around this year with more cap constraints, with probably everybody's agent coming, hey, we want a trophy, I want a new contract. They went out and got the best free agent on the market, Miles Robinson. They did eventually get Luca Oriano over the line to replace Boreal. I still have no idea how they replaced Santiago with DeAndre Yedlin, which is an improvement for me. And I don't know how they fit in the cap. Pavel Buca, I think, will be an improvement over Junior Moreno. And that's not to be dismissive of Moreno, because he was very, very good and underrated, I think. But I think Buca is really, really good. It's extreme. Like, it's almost impossible. Like, again, like particularly the Vasquez, Boreal, Mosquera. You can't one-for-one value dollar for dollar replace them. So they kind of tweaked their identity. Now they're even better defensively with Miazga and Robinson anchoring the back line and Murphy improving and so on, all this stuff, right? And then they still have the MVP in attack, and they still have a $7 million center forward ahead of them, right? Like, so while they have attacking issues, I think that they're going to be fine, and it'll probably get better than fine, but like the absolute floor is going to be fine. And so the fact that they were able to completely reinvent themselves, replace half the starting 11, and 3, again, irreplaceable players dollar for dollar is just phenomenal.
It's definitely a change of fortunes for FC Cincinnati to be what feels like, anyway, a destination for players. I don't know what other options Yedlin had, but it sounds like he did, and on some level, want to come to FC Cincinnati. Obviously, Miles Robinson as a free agent. What do you account for that change in sort of Cincy's reputation? And can we give all of the credit to Jeff Birding?
Albright, Noonan, and like, look, man, like going back to the convo we were having like 10 minutes ago about all the players who improved. Players around the league see that, man. Like Miles Robinson sees like everything that, like, again, Yerson Mosquera probably didn't know what he was before he got to Cincinnati, but like it was funny, like talking to Pat Noonan and other people. I did a story on Mosquera after the season, and like they were detailing, like, dude, like he's a really good kid. He means well, but like, dude, he's like, I don't mean this to like sound like a dick, but like there was like just a lot we had to do with him. And it was like week 1, it was like these basic things. And it was like, he's like, dude, I told him once, like he was like talking to like chirping at Lucho and Junior Moreno and like a couple of the other really established guys in the team. And then it's like, dude, if you do that again, I'm not going to stop them when they kick you, right? Like, he's like, you gotta like relax, bro. Like, but it was like this confident at like talented, all this, like all these good things that they were able to harness in a better way. Like Miles Robinson's, like, that's why Cincinnati was a top choice if he was staying in MLS. Players see this. So it's a combination of the play style, the coaching staff, and players talking to each other. They know they're going to get better. Like Brandon Vasquez, his improvements really started under Nightcamp, but really started when Albright was named GM, fired the coach, and then they changed to a pressing system and 2 forwards. And so, like, if you go to like the game by game thing, that's when he had his hot run at the end of the season. So, like, I think you give Albright credit there too, right? So it's the play style, it's the coaching. Players know that they're going to come here and have the opportunity to get better and play with some really good players.
So on the subject of coaching and the improvement with coaching, how much longer are we going to be able to enjoy the services of Kenny Arena and Dom Kinnear in this town? Because it feels like, especially with Kenny, he's overdue to get a look as a manager somewhere in this league.
Lastly, I probably should have said Skyline Chili only is the only reason that brings people here. So that's a recruiting tool. Miami has Messi in South Beach, and Cincinnati can put a bowl of Skyline Chili in front of them. On the coaching staff, what I love so much about the Dom Kinnear hire is like, yeah, I think he should be in the mix for head coaches. But it's almost as if time's passed him by. Just, obviously he's an older guy. Like, I think he's an A+ assistant, and I would consider him for a head coach if I was running a team. I don't know if I'd hire him just because, like, look at the hires that came in. Like, Ali Mackay, DC United. Like, wouldn't it be weird if a first-time GM was like, oh, I can't wait for this opportunity. I'm super excited. I'm going to do something that I'm really proud of. Going to go hire the 2007 MLS Cup champion, right? Like, so I think that, again, on merit, he does deserve to be in the mix for these coaching jobs. I'm just not sure if he's going to get any offers. So that's great. Kenny Arena, I think, would be more likely because that's the nature of this game. Like, that's how Pat Noonan got his job in Cincy. Like, the best assistants to the best teams, like that, those who gets the interviews and gets the chances. So Kenny Arena, I think, is more likely just because of his age and profile and everything else than it is Dom Kinnear. And that's not because Dom Kinnear isn't good enough to be a head coach. And it was even to the point I was talking to somebody in his camp, like, does Dom even want to be a head coach? And it's like nobody. It's like, yeah, everybody obviously wants to be a head coach. Like, because like my thought was like, is he turning down interview requests? Like, why isn't he getting more interviews? And they're like, he was just not being asked. Oh wow, surprising.
Our win.
Yeah, I'll blame Gary Smith in Nashville. Not he's quite that old, but he's not doing the old timers any favors. You start looking at the 35-year-olds there. I'm curious then. So you've touched on it. We've seen some lack of output from the offense for FC Cincinnati to start the year, and a lot of that has to do with new pieces getting used to each other. It is a bit of a step down at the moment, going from Barrial to Luca there. But I'm curious though. Maybe, and I don't know if you can put a source on this or anything, but I'm curious if you get the impression that Boupendza could be, let's say, not finish the season in FC Cincinnati. Is that a realistic possibility here?
I'd still be very, very surprised
Okay.
how quick, if things he would definitely get the run of the season, and I think at least, and maybe something changes, but who knows? And then we could be having this conversation next year if it still looks like this. It's all right, they might have to have a decision in the summer. What I will say about Boupendza, I've had the range of what people tell me about him when I was asking about when they signed him, and then this winter about obviously some of the issues he's had, right? About being suspended by Cincinnati and Gabon. Tough, both your teams. One person said, yeah, we've scouted him when he was with Gabon, and Bouanga was playing. He's like, dude, he's a better player than Bouanga, or was a better player, whatever it is. And I was like, that feels too strong for me, but noted that at least in that range. And then I had another person tell me, and this is all from other clubs, it's like, yeah, we were in the process of signing him or wanting to sign him. And it's we just looked into, and it was just we can't take the risk on this. Right. And they didn't go into specifics about what it was, but I think it's fair to say that anecdote again after he got suspended by both Gabon and Cincinnati at different points in the fall last year. So that's nobody's questioning his talent. It's that stuff. And that's what's been so weird. It's been his talent so far this year. And maybe that's because everybody's adapting to each other, because Boupendza and Baird, they both like to drift into the half spaces. And you have to have somebody kind of occupying the center. And that's why I'm so intrigued by Kevin Kelsy. And I'm trying, I keep on saying it unfair to be Brandon Vazquez's replacement. He's going to step in immediately. He's a 19-year-old kid who, we've been joking, played 15 minutes in Ukraine this year. So it's super unfair to expect him to come in and be the starter and solve all the problems. But that kind of profile of player, really, really excited to see him in, when he adapts to the team, because I think that would solve a lot of problems if they had somebody in the mold of Brandon Vazquez in terms of physicality, intelligent, and willingness to run. And those were the three attributes that when I asked about Kevin Kelsy, that's what came back to me.
And it's funny you bring up Yerson Mosquera too, because somebody pointed this out to me, was that for all you want to talk about Kevin Kelsy not having a ton of minutes, Mosquera was coming off an injury. Mosquera hadn't played virtually any minutes prior to joining FC Cincinnati for at least 6 to 8 months. And he was on loan from Wolves, but hadn't really played for Wolves at all. So he stepped in as a 21-year-old, similarly not with a lot of minutes at a high level, and immediately delivered on the promise of talent. So I don't know. I hope Kevin Kelsy is like that. It feels like, and I don't know if you agree with this, U22 players just feel like scratch off lottery tickets to a certain extent. And you just have to see some of them pay out, but the only mistake you can make is not signing them and not continuing to churn them. You can't win if you don't play.
Yeah. And to the next point of if you're spending big money on a U22, then I think you could change the expectations. Atlanta's failed miserably with Franklin Barros, Santi Sosa, Eric Lopez, and Edwin Mosquera. Not only did none of them pan out, and maybe Mosquera will, I don't really see it, but maybe. Not only did none of them pan out, they spent so much to acquire Sosa and Ibarra that they still count as U22 initiative slots, not at the club. Cincinnati loaned out Angulo and made sure it was structured in a way that they would free up the U22 slot. So it's not even just, if they don't work out, they don't work out. It's if you spend too much on the wrong guy, then that hamstring you to take another swing. And so, we should be looking at it like that, because again, looking around the league, even when you throw money at it, there's no guarantee. Miami have done it incredibly, because Tomas Aviles, Diego Gomez, and Federico Redondo, 3 phenomenal players. And they spent money, but again, just spending money doesn't automatically equate to them working out. You look at Chicago. I thought Fede Navarro was going to be awesome. He's been bad. He's gotten worse since his first half season here. Again, Atlanta is kind of the worst example, and you go on down the list. So yes, like I'm very excited to see what Cincy will do with their other two U22 slots now with the new rules coming in the summer, once the MLSPA kind of confirms it. Because like since they are a club that could spend 5, 7, 8 million, like Miami did on their U22s. And so far, this front office and technical staff and coaching staff have overwhelmingly hit on signing. So I would give them the benefit of the doubt on what they do next. And there was a forward there they almost signed. I think it was Rakov. There's just so many names.
I think it was Rakov. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Serbian guy, I think.
Yes, yeah, really, really big talent. He ended up going to Red Bull Salzburg, like one of the highest renowned clubs for youth identification and development. Like that's what the players that they were looking at. And again, Kevin Kelsy was a really highly rated prospect that Shakhtar signed. And Shakhtar is really good at identifying South American talent, particularly Brazilian is what they're known for. But like so these are high pedigree players, and again, like I'm generally optimistic, as I was saying before, with the signings, but like particularly with a team like this, a team like Atlanta, since Garth got there, it's like, all right, I'm just assuming this player's good until I'm proven otherwise.
Yeah. The new rules is interesting. I'm glad you brought it up. I'm curious from your perspective, if you are, say, a generic MLS GM, and let's say you're starting over, like with our fierce rival San Diego. That is the team that we hate the most, obviously. Would you advise a GM to pursue the 3DP 3U22 package, or would you go for the 2DP 4U22 and multiple, millions of GAM package?
Dude, it's a great question, man. Like, I don't know. I don't know yet. I'd still probably lean 3 senior DPs and 3 U22s. I would definitely pick that over the 2 and 4, like absolutely. But the 2 million GAM, that's a lot, man. Like that's one Paul Arriola, or that's extending your salary cap by 2 million, right? Like, that's why I thought it was going to be easy for Miami to just go sign a senior DP this summer. Like, yeah, it's an obvious decision, but like, dude, for a team like Miami, they should absolutely do the 2 and 4 and the extra 2 million in allocation money, because every single year they're going to need to regenerate allocation money. That's why they lost Gregory. That's why they lost Kamal Miller. So I think it's a team by team basis. I'd still go for 3 and 3 because you win trophies with in-prime players for the most part. Again, and deferring to the smarter GMs in the league, Garth and Chris Albright. And like, you look at these teams, 3 senior DPs, even when you can only have 1 U22 initiative. Or like Atlanta were able to keep all 3 open because Saba Lobajanite is under max TAM for when Thiago Almada graduates into senior DP. He's still here, right? Like, so, but look at Garth's teams in Seattle. There's Nico Lateo, Raul Ruiz, like all this stuff. So I would lean that way because I think that's the best way to win trophies as well. But it's a team by team basis and depends on what your roster build on. I think a team like San Diego is probably going to do the 2 and 4 because all they're talking about right now is youth development kind of things.
$2 million a GAM. That's 1 Paul Arriola or 2 Bryce Dukes.
And you get Kamal Miller too.
Tom, you've been incredibly generous with your time. We want to respect that this is breaking news, doesn't wait for stupid podcasts with a dozen listeners. I want to finish off with this question. What is your dream scoop? If you could pick any scoop to get, what kind of scoop would you like to be the person blasting our notifications with? What do you want to break for us?
It's got to be something dumb, but I would go to my heart with something Liverpool related. I was in the mix for something Liverpool related. I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like, it's before Liverpool. I don't know. Arne Slots it might be coming to Liverpool, and I was like, I might have a source around this. Like, let me try it. Hasn't worked out yet, but it was just the idea was enough to keep me going.
Maybe it's Sir Minty to Liverpool, right? That's the dream. That's the dream transfer.
Sir Minty to be one of my groomsmen. That's a scoop I want.
There you go. No, like you said, Tom, you've been incredibly generous. Please jump on your next call and interview somebody who actually matters. We really, really appreciate the time, man. Thank you so much.
Cheers, guys. It's been a lot of fun.
And before we head on over to part 2, I want to tell you about our sponsor, Cincy Shirts. These guys, let me tell you about these guys. Do you know about these guys? Let me tell you about these guys. Cincy Shirts has been around from the beginning. If you ask me, and nobody did, Cincy Shirts was instrumental in FC Cincinnati becoming very, very popular and eventually leading to their MLS bid, which is why I am so excited that the Post and the Postcast are able to partner with them. Look, here's the deal. if you use the promo code ThePostCincy, all one word, all caps, when purchasing something from them, you get 10% off, and we get a little bit of money back our way, huh? It also lets them know that you heard about them through our show. And even if that's not true, it makes me feel good, and it makes them feel good. So use that code. Look, they just released some new Hawaiian-style shirts. I don't know if they're actually Hawaiian-style, but some new floral prints for FCC, some button-ups. Get on this. The supplies do not last. However, they do have 3 in-store locations, including a new one over in Loveland, where they can print most of the designs for you on a shirt. The button-ups, I don't think they can do on demand, but they can print those designs on demand in a shirt on any size that you'd like. I've definitely used that service. It is awesome. So again, the promo code, ThePostCincy, all one word, all caps, knock a couple bucks off of your next order. It works on non-FCC gear too, all right? Get yourself an Ellie De La Cruz shirt or something like that. You're gonna look good in it. You're gonna have a good time. And you're gonna save a couple of bucks doing this. So Cincy Shirts, again, cincyshirts.com, link in the description, the code, ThePostCincy, all one word, all caps. A huge thank you to Cincy Shirts for sponsoring this and many other episodes of the Postcast.
Welcome back, and once again want to thank Tom Bogert for stopping by to join us. If you know anything about the breaking news business, whenever a newsbreaker is doing an interview, I've heard interviews with Ian Rappaport, I've heard interviews with Adam Schefter, with Woj. They all get nervous that when they have stopped to do an interview, they are missing something, or there is a chance they're going to get scooped by somebody else. And I couldn't help but notice that as soon as we stopped the interview with Tom, immediately he fired off like 3 tweets.
I saw the same thing. I was going to mention it too.
That like there was some news in the queue that was delayed while he was with us. So a big thanks to Tom. That's really cool. If you don't follow him on Twitter, much like Kevin's live read for Cincy Shirts, I just don't believe you that you're not following Tom Bogert if you are one of the 12 people listening to this podcast like a total sicko. Grayson, with Tom Bogert, are you mad we didn't get more mustache talk?
I am mad we didn't get more mustache talk, but I think it's just a good excuse to bring him back, because you always want to leave people wanting a little bit more, right?
I agree with that. Also, I did not cop to being Tom Bogirl, so we'll have something else to talk about at a later
hopefully
date.
He doesn't listen to this.
There's
Which
no chance
he won't. There's
no chance he's listening to this at all.
I'm sure he's done podcasts before.
Yeah.
I'm sure he doesn't listen.
Can you imagine if you were someone of Tom Bogert's level, or one of these people like, the Adam Schefter or those people, where you're on 1,000 podcasts just doing guest drops all the time, if you actually were the psycho that went back and listened to yourself each and every time? I don't know that I could live with myself. Especially, like, I would be embarrassed if he started listening to the postcast and found out what an enormous waste of time it was for him to join us for an interview.
Well, it's like you listen to actors talk about it, and like a lot of actors just like never watch their own movies.
I mean, I wouldn't. I don't want to see. I hate the way I sound. I would hate the way I look too.
I wouldn't either. And like, it's also like, you don't want to be self-conscious about how you look, right?
Right.
Like, you want to just give the performance that you think is the best performance in the
scene. And then memory hole it then.
Yeah.
It's done.
Let it go.
It's like, I didn't, when my wife and I got married, we did not get a videographer for our wedding. A, because I've never met a person that ever actually watches their own wedding footage back. But also, it was awesome. And I don't want to have a video that shows that I don't know how to dance. In my mind, everything worked great. It was beautiful. It was magical. It was romantic. We were the most beautiful couple ever. And now I have nothing to prove or disprove otherwise. And I think that that's really the best way to be.
In the same vein, when I, stay up late at night and email old girlfriends, I don't go into my sent folder.
No.
And reread them. No.
No. They exist in the moment. They're ephemeral.
Right.
They're records of a time and place that I never want to revisit in my life. So thanks to Tom Bogert. That was phenomenal. We'll hopefully have him back at some point the next time there is breaking news about the FC, or not. We'll see. But special thanks to him for joining us. We are an FC Cincinnati podcast, so we do have some FC Cincinnati business to take care of. At some point, Kevin is going to hop in, but peek behind the curtain right now. We don't always record these in the order that you listen to them, and we especially don't always record these in the order that you listen to them when we have a guest whose timetable we're working around. You don't call Tom Bogert up or DM Tom Bogert and say, hey, we record at 8:30 on Wednesdays. Does that work with your schedule? You go the other way around. When can Tom have a minute for you? So
the Patreon. I know Kevin talked about the Patreon milestone. Patreon numbies aren't high enough, and you guys aren't buying enough from Cincy shirts for like us to even organize our own schedules around the podcast recording.
Not at all.
Like, you get what you get.
Yeah, we all had this awkward moment like before Tom hopped on, where we all looked at one another. It's like, where does your boss think you are right now? And then Grayson dropped off to take a business call. Kevin was moving the mouse around to stay active on Teams. That's just what you get when you're a small-time podcast that only 12 people listen to. But anyway, we've got FC Cincinnati news. Grayson, you may recall this past weekend, we talked about the impending signing of one Kevin Kelsy that was heavily rumored. And wouldn't you know
the third Kelsy brother.
Yes.
He was dating Lucy Dacus.
As far as I'm concerned, now that he is signed for FC Cincinnati, he's the only Kelsy brother that I recognize. And Tay, if you're out there and you're listening, you need to do an upgrade right here, because the superior Kelsy wears orange and blue. He's not the guy on the Chiefs coming home to you.
I hear his frame is formidable.
Yes. Tall. That's what we're all looking for here.
Yeah. We hear he's tall. Some people disagree. But
yeah,
your mileage
it is what it is. Kevin Kelsy signing is official. It is Pat Brennan official, Tom Bogert official, Laura Failer official. Anyone who wants to be official indicates that the Kelsy signing is official. He has been at the Mercy Health Training Center, but training off to the side so as not to run afoul of various immigration issues. I think it's interesting that they even acknowledged he's here, because usually when we get that signing and the visa process isn't completed, we get a lot of, well, maybe, and, he's not here yet. We'll see. And there's an unnamed trialist that just happens to coincide with what's going on. But no, we got confirmation from the team in the way of Carter Chapley that he is in fact there and training off to the side. Grayson, we talked about this extensively on the weekend episode, on the Monday episode, so I don't want to tread into a lot of rehashing of ground here, but I am curious, what do you make of the fact that the team has been so open about Kelsy training, and what kind of a timetable do you think he's on for actually appearing?
I think that the team has been more open about Kelsy training because they don't want to revoke any more credentials of people watching training.
Or they might not have as much control over people that are watching training right now.
Yeah. And I think that it's kind of pointed that he's, expressly off to the side, doing his own thing, just doing like some fun runs while he's on vacation in the US. I wouldn't have any expectations about his timetable for like appearing in a game. I would be glad that they got the signing done this window. I think they're waiting to announce the signing. I don't know this, but I assume, but like they could have announced, because they had to get the signing done by the end of the day Tuesday, right?
Right.
So like they could have announced the signing, assuming it was done by the end of the window, like any time. I assume they're waiting to have a expected debut to announce the signing. So I wouldn't put a lot of pressure on like him being available this weekend or even next weekend or any particular weekend. My personal view on it is I'm happy that they got something across the line by all reporting this window, so that his debut is going to be like May June instead of August.
Right. I think that it's important. So where I'm at with this news, and where I think that if you're an FC Cincinnati fan, if you're a fan of the FC, why you should be, I'll say, gruntled by the situation as it is right now, is they got him into the country. And we've seen that for some of these signings, that's not a guarantee that they can get someone signed, traveled to the United States, presumably get the medicals and the contract situation done. All that is done. He's here. And being here is half the battle when it comes to a lot of this stuff.
And I don't know the entire process, but like my understanding is usually they have to like leave the country at some point to get that visa to play. So like you had I think we can stop being coy about it at this point. You had like Jurgen Locadia in training and playing in preseason games back in 2020, but he had to leave the country to get his visa that authorized him to play in like actual games.
Right.
Which is why he like came in to New York Saturday afternoon, was like came on as a sub like later that evening.
Right.
You
now,
know?
Does he have to go back to his home country, or does he have to go to his consulate here in the United States?
So the first part of the answer is I don't know. The second part of the answer is I don't think he has to go back to his home country. I think that you have to. I hope somebody on some social media corrects me. But I think, my belief, this is just based on my recollection of similar scenarios, is you have to just leave the country and go to an embassy or consulate somewhere outside the U.S. So you can go do that in like Mexico or Canada or something.
Canada. I think, who was it? There was somebody that went and used Canada for this. Was this Mascara went to Canada to do this?
I think so.
Yeah. I remember Mascara got trapped in Canada for a little bit, and I thought it was like waiting on something or waiting to do something in Canada that was taking a little while on this.
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess at some point we should
learn this.
Probably learn this, or like try to like figure out some more information, or have somebody on the show who like
right
knows literally anything about this.
The problem is it's
all
law.
of that sounds like works.
Yeah.
Sounds like work.
Yeah. It would take a lawyer to figure all this stuff out, and I don't know where we're going to find one of those on this podcast. The good news is he's here. He's training. These are all good things. I want to draw your attention specifically to some reporting on this and tell me what you think about this. So we talked with Tom Bogert a little bit about this, and he did some reporting on this. And there was one part of his reporting that I found very interesting, and that was that he said when we talked to him in the last segment, that Shakhtar's approach to negotiating was sort of all over the table on this, that it was hard to figure out where they were from 1 minute to the next. Then all of a sudden the deal materialized in an instant. But his reporting that he wrote with The Athletic, I'm going to read this for you word for word. Despite Shakhtar's initial unwillingness to negotiate, the clubs had been locked in talks for Kelsy for a better part of a month, sources say. Shakhtar didn't want to lose the player despite the fact he'd been buried down the depth chart, which I think we heard Tom talking about just a second ago, while Kelsy was ready to leave Cincy in search of regular minutes. That stuck out to me a little bit in his article, in that if Kelsy thought a move to Cincinnati was going to play him regular minutes, maybe that does tend to lend to the idea that this team intends for him to walk into a pretty substantial role. What say you about this?
So the first part I want to say is like I'm extremely confident that there's no like minutes guarantee written into anything, because that's just not how anybody,
that's not how they do business.
Like Pat Noonan or Chris Albright does business. Like you have to earn your minutes with the understanding that, you know, big money players are signed to start, right?
I will say though that it would not surprise me, having said that, this is a different situation than when Yerson Mosquera was loaned to this team last year. Yerson was loaned explicitly by Wolves to develop. They wanted developmental minutes for Yerson to prepare him for a better league. There was probably an understanding with Mosquera that when that loan went through, that there was going to be starting minutes for Yersin in MLS. I don't think this is a similar situation to that, though.
Yeah. The other thing about, and I didn't want to like derail our conversation with Tom with this, but like the fact that with Yersin there was no purchase option at all tells you like how much confidence Wolves had that the player would like earn and keep minutes.
Yeah.
Right? Like this was a situation where this was a player who, however they evaluated him, was viewed as somebody who was going to be a contributor game in, game out all season.
Right.
Which is why Wolves, didn't want to have a purchase option, and why FC Cincinnati, more importantly, accepted the player without a purchase option.
Right.
Right.
Because you're not going to get a player like that on that salary number. That was as Tom put out, that was a white whale unicorn type situation that just doesn't come along very often.
Yeah. And, maybe there was some willingness to give him minutes, although, like, you can't say he didn't earn them, right?
No.
But maybe there, all things being equal, there would have been some willingness to give him minutes over an equally deserving player to try to preserve a relationship with Wolves. Like, I don't know, like, how that factors into it necessarily, but like, Mascara, like, earned every minute he got. Like, there was no question that Mascara was a first choice center back for FC Cincinnati, probably a first choice center back for every team in MLS.
Yes.
And that's why that we needed to sign somebody on like a max TAM deal.
To replace him. Yeah, that Miles Robinson.
who like, like, I don't know what the metrics look like, but I'd be surprised if Robinson was viewed as like far and away an improvement on Mascara. Like, I've taken a position that he's like a slight improvement.
Yeah, I think it's I think no matter what way you want to argue that between Mascara and Robinson, you will find eyeball data and metrics that would support your point that Mascara is slightly better or Robinson is slightly better.
Right.
That's a compliment to Robinson because Yersin Mascara is a dynamic young player who is destined for absolute greatness, I think.
Who's starting in La Liga and starting for Colombia, and I assume is going to be at Copa America this summer.
Yeah.
So like with Kelsy, given that there's a loan fee, maybe FC Cincinnati is willing to pay a loan fee because they think he's going to get minutes right away. But honestly, like, the fact of the matter is he wasn't getting minutes at Shakhtar.
No.
For whatever reason. And you have a team who's interested in bringing you in on a loan. I think it's fair to say, like, they would have described whatever role they envision him playing. So him saying, like, he wants to move to get minutes, I don't think that implies, like, any kind of minutes guarantee or very much about what FC Cincinnati expects from him, other than, he's not getting minutes at his current team. This other team is interested in bringing him on loan. It's fair to assume that he is going to have the opportunity to earn minutes, if he plays well.
Right.
And if he trains
well. And the purchase option is high enough too that like it's protecting Shakhtar, I think.
Yeah,
from all eventualities.
I think the purchase option, and Tom Bogert, not on our show, but on his YouTube show, talked about the purchase option as like protecting Shakhtar more, in the sense that you can negotiate the purchase option down by declining it.
Right.
But you can't. But Shakhtar would not have any opportunity to negotiate the purchase option up. If he comes in the team and scores 20 goals this season.
Right. But I do think the purchase option is interesting in that regard, that they're protected, but they protected themselves at a pretty high number.
Right. So
it shows that's interesting to me.
They think he's a talent, and they paid real money for him as a 17 or 18-year-old from Venezuela. They paid 7 figures for him. as an extremely unproven player. And then the other thing about him maybe getting some minutes is he does have a profile that nobody else in the team has.
Right.
Right. So even if he doesn't get even if it takes him a while to get a starting role, you could easily see him as a regular late game sub on this team, or even like a 60, 65 minute sub on this team.
What do you think about the idea of forcing Lucho to invite him to his house and let him live in a spare bedroom just to build chemistry with Lucho, that you guys meet your new roommate? This is almost like a buddy cop idea, but he's 19. I can't imagine he's got a place to live in Cincinnati yet. Just see if Lucho has a basement room with an Xbox or something like that. Throw him down there, have him over for family dinners and everything like that, and see if we can cut off some of these chemistry issues before they even start.
I mean, I'm pro.
Yeah.
I think the chemistry issues are going to be less of a problem with Kelsy, because and we talked about this we had on this with Bogert. He doesn't have a lot of minutes, so it's hard to really scout him. But I don't think he's going to be like a Boupendza Baird situation where he's trying to come back and get in the half space.
Right.
Play behind. I think he's going to be, as far as where he likes to play, more like Vasquez. So if he's just more of a box target, his chemistry with Lucho should be less of a problem, because he's going to be this is a final pass situation versus more of a
build,
pass in the build up kind of situation.
I just like the idea of forcing Lucho to make this guy his little brother and have to take him around places and drive him places.
100%. 100%. Lucho should have to
plus,
Lucho
it'd be really fun.
Drive him around.
It would be really funny if Lucho at 5'4" and this guy at 6'4", just him being followed around by a dude that's a foot taller than him.
Yeah.
Like a Mutt and Jeff routine. They call it scary dog privilege, I think. Lucho doesn't have to worry about anything anymore. Okay, so let's put a bow on this Kevin Kelsy talk. It's fascinating to me. I'm excited for this. It's hard to know what we're getting just because the minutes have been so few, but I like Tom's idea on this. Why would you be mad, or why would you be nitpicky, or why would you be down on this? This is almost like, it's full of potential. This is you can see whatever you want to see in Kevin Kelsy. If you see a Brandon Vasquez clone, there's no reason to disbelieve he's going to be a Brandon Vasquez clone. If you think that he is going to be the Venezuelan Olivier Giroud, there's no evidence to disprove that fact either. So why not be positive when all the options are out on the table? My question to you to top this off is, if you had to put a date on when you think the first time we will see Kevin Kelsy hit the field for the FC, where would you put that date? I'm going to guess, based on the fact that I see you looking at the calendar right now, that you do not believe it will be this weekend for the FC Cincinnati in their big matchup versus the Colorado Rapids. But on the schedule, if we look ahead, they are on the road at Orlando City. They're playing on the road against the Columbus Crew, and then they are home against Atlanta United. Where do you see his debut coming?
I'd be very happy if he was available by the game in Columbus, the May 11th. If I was betting money, I would say
we would encourage you to do responsibly if you're going to, but I
would say Atlanta or St. Louis. Atlanta, less Atlanta, just because it's a midweek game. But who knows when he would have his out of country visit or embassy visit or whatever. But if he is available by the Columbus game on May 11th, we should be very happy and impressed with the efficiency with FC Cincinnati made this happen.
Do you think there's any chance he starts that Columbus game?
I would say less than 15%.
That's not zero.
Well, yeah, because I'm not gonna put zero on basically anything.
That's true.
Like if he comes in, let's say somehow by some miracle, he's available by Orlando City, and then he comes in as a sub and he scores a goal, then I wouldn't be surprised at all if he starts against Columbus.
Yeah.
But I think if Columbus is the first game he's available, I'd be very surprised if he starts.
Right. I do like the idea of just throwing a guy out there in a rivalry game who doesn't know anything about the rivalry, or this is just my first game, and just get it out of the way and do that. Plus, then if he sucks and you lose, you can always blame it on the kid, and it's not you can as a fan you can deflect.
So it's not like a Miazga or Wobodo situation where we like literally don't have another person to play this position.
We don't.
I mean, we haven't had anybody play this position well, but we have like a DP and we have like other
right
players who theoretically should be good at it.
So a little less pressure. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to say that he plays at least 15 minutes against Orlando City. I think that there's going to be a quick turnaround on this. With the FC,
Vasquez just hit the post against Columbus.
Will you please update me if he scores? That will make me very happy.
Yeah.
With the FC word, I don't know if we had this when we recorded on Monday because it seems so far away. Sergio Santos, probably not going to be available, at least for the foreseeable future, it looks like. But Roman Celentano back to training. So we do have the potential out there for this next weekend. Home re-debut for Roman, re-debut for the full back line. That is always good. The full week of training usually means under the Pat Noonan system that you will be a starter. So fingers crossed that we see Roman back this weekend. Otherwise, it has been a little bit of a slow week for the FC. I know that you say that with the fact that we did make a player signing this week, which is exciting, but we shall see. The only other thing that happened this week, Lucho Acosta makes team of the week. So there you go. But it was a newsy week outside of FC Cincinnati in the soccer world. Grayson, where do you want to get started with? You want to get started with the relevant sports lawsuit that we talked about this past weekend and an update from 9 of your favorite people in Washington, D.C., our United States Supreme Court.
Yeah, let's start with the relevant sports lawsuit. So what happened was we talked about how the case was before the Supreme Court and they were considering whether to take it. Literally the day that episode came out, the Supreme Court decided not to take it. And what that means is that the Court of Appeals decision stands, which likely means that foreign leagues can play games, like meaningful, competitive games, in the United States. Now, there's two things I want to say about that. One is, before we get to like the analysis and narrative stuff, one is that the president of La Liga has already declared that like the 2025-26 season they plan to hold league games in the U.S. And the second thing is that there's a little bit of action relating to the settlement between FIFA and Relevant Sports. And people may recall that like FIFA and Relevant Sports had reached a settlement to dismiss FIFA from the case. The settlement is dependent on the court accepting certain stipulations, which are just, agreed facts that you enter into the record between FIFA and Relevant Sports. And U.S. Soccer has asked the court to give it the opportunity to look at the settlement agreement between FIFA and Relevant Sports, to, I guess, preserve its right to object to those stipulations. And I think next week they're going to have a hearing on this. May 2nd, it looks like on the internet. So, I guess there's a chance that U.S. Soccer tries to mess with the settlement between FIFA and relevant sports, but the fact that the Supreme Court didn't take the case, which happened. Sorry, Cucho just scored against Monterrey.
That's unfortunate.
So the Supreme Court decided not to take the case after FIFA and relevant sports settled. So I'm not really sure whether the settlement matters at this point.
I mean, if the settlement's undone, would that change the procedural posture of the case such that an appeal to the Supreme Court would be in a different situation, or is it one bite at the apple?
I don't really see how it would change it, because the Second Circuit said that they had personal jurisdiction over FIFA, and their decision applied to both FIFA and U.S. Soccer. So, like, what happens? FIFA goes back in the case, and the Second Circuit decision applies that says they can't have this rule preventing foreign leagues from holding competitive games in the U.S. That applies to both U.S. Soccer and FIFA. What does it matter that FIFA's in the case or not? At that,
I agree.
I don't really know. I'm not super close to it, so maybe there are some wrinkles I haven't seen. But
is it a good time now? Is it a good time now to point out that if this case had proceeded to the Supreme Court, the two of us were intending on potentially going as part of the spectator gallery for this to go report live?
Yeah, I'm actually disappointed that the Supreme Court didn't take it, because I was fully intending to go to the argument.
What an away days that would have been. The two of us going to the Supreme Court while Kevin stands outside, waiting to find out what happened. It would have been great, too. We could have done some sketches of the justices and all of the lawyers from Relevant Sports and from U.S. Soccer. That would have been keen. It's funny this happened as soon as we released the podcast. Once again, the Post is the impetus for news to break just to make our episodes seem less relevant. So I'm going to go ahead and chalk that up to us on this one. Scale of 1 to 10, how big of an L is this for the U.S. Soccer Federation?
Feels like a 10.
Yeah, I would say 11. I was going to go to 11 or 12, actually.
Because it's a huge limitation on their ability to regulate, like, professional soccer in the U.S. Because if like San Antonio wants to have a Division I team, they don't need U.S. Soccer's permission. They can just join Liga MX, and have a team there. Like, I'm very curious. It's way too early to have, I think, strong opinions on what will or will not happen. But it feels like it puts a great deal of pressure on MLS when it comes to figuring out what spending changes it's going to make and how it's going to market itself. Because, we've seen it in the last year and a half. MLS has been all in on Messi.
Yes.
To the detriment of every other team. And, who gives a shit about Messi when you can see
when the public investment fund sends Ronaldo over here,
Ronaldo versus Neymar in a competitive match, or you can see Holland and who's a big star in the Premier League.
I don't know, De Bruyne, is he still big?
They played in the same team. Oh, but you can see Holland and De Bruyne play against whatever loser Arsenal has. Right.
I'm sure one of those losers that hung 5 on Chelsea this week.
You can see Saka versus Holland in New York City.
Right.
In a competitive league match. Like, are they going to like really open up spending and like try to advance being like a top league in the world, or are they going to do what I've thought should have been the focus even with Messi, which is like leaning into we're your hometown team. Like
Yeah.
we have like leading into regional, local identity. Because like I was in, New York a week and a half ago, and I was talking to a friend of mine who lives there, who's English, and he's not really he doesn't really like follow MLS. He doesn't know a lot about it. We were talking about how they're a team in Cincinnati, and he's like, well, how's the level? And I said, it's not, the Premier League level, but it's nice that we have a team, just down the street, and we can go see live matches, week in, week out. And he agreed with that. He said, yeah, he's like, yeah, it is nice to have, to have a local team, even if it's not a top level. And I still feel that way. Like I'm all in on FC. I watch a lot less of world soccer than I used to because I can go watch professional soccer down the street.
Yeah. And that's
people who aren't all in on MLS yet, are they even going to be gettable when there are regularly competitive Premier League and La Liga games in the United States?
I don't think they were gettable before this either. I mean,
they're probably gettable on a longer term.
Yeah, their kids may be gettable. I mean, that's like really, you're talking about MLS and you're talking about a lot of this stuff. And I always remind myself that for a lot of teams in MLS, there still hasn't been the first fan who was born, raised, and buys a ticket as an adult of the team that they grew up rooting for. If you were born the day FC Cincinnati was founded, you are still what? 9 years old? 10 years old right now? Like, it's so hard what MLS is being asked to fight against and the standard MLS is held to where the idea that there are so many adults that have latched on to FC Cincinnati and people that have latched on to FC Cincinnati, where it didn't exist during the formative years of becoming a sports fan, it's insane to me. It's insane. And most of these teams are fighting with one hand behind their back because the apex popular, like MLS has never been more popular than it is right now. There have never been more teams than there are right now. There have never been more teams that are well attended than there are right now. And the fans that are going to like carry this league, they're all, in grade school right now. And so it hasn't had time to build yet to the point where there is the generational fandom. And, you might be a Euro snob living somewhere, but odds are your kids are probably going to be MLS fans if they're soccer fans, just because they are growing up now in a country where it is the team down the road. I think the big losers here, I think MLS is a loser on this, just for all the reasons you said. And what I think this does is, Kevin has talked about this in the past. If this regulation goes down, and it has gone down here, I think the next domino to fall is probably going to be the idea that you can't have teams that exist across borders, with your idea of putting a Liga MX team in Texas. And I think the inevitable outcome to all this, and I think if you dose someone with the truth serum at the MLS headquarters, they may have already seen the writing on the wall for this. I think eventually a merger at some point between Liga MX and MLS makes way, way, way too much sense for both parties involved. And I think this probably hastens a move towards that, to where you're going to have, if not an outright merger, just a lot more close alignment of maybe something more akin to the way the American League and the National League used to function before interleague play, where the World Series is no longer just MLS Cup. It's a cup that a playoff between the two leagues and a champion of North America, for lack of ignoring some of these other smaller countries. So I think that is sort of now the path that we're headed on for this. The other big loser that I haven't heard talked about as much is U.S. soccer, specifically with this regard, is I think that once you can start to watch La Liga games in the United States or Premier League games in the United States, I think the big loser is the cash grab USMNT friendly setup, where you can have a traveling roadshow of the U.S. men's national team play South Korea or some B-level European side and draw 25, 30,000 fans. I think those markets will start to become the markets that would support that otherwise will start to become saturated with regular games from other leagues. And I don't think U.S. soccer is going to be able to count on just rolling the national team out and being guaranteed a good gate for a bunch of friendlies. I think that with more product that's going to be available to people, I think the competition for dollars in that space is going to be a lot harder. And that helps keep the lights on for U.S. soccer. So I don't know how that reality is going to strike them.
Yeah, I think also we may see, the winners and losers would be like the pro rel for U.S. people, because if there is like some type of Liga MX versus U.S. soccer and MLS merger or relationship, you may see either some version of pro rel, but it's like a closed system still,
right?
Or Liga MX abandoning pro rel entirely, which is like what they're
moving towards anyway. Which leads us into an interesting topic of conversation that's a sort of a corollary to this, is that word broke today via The Athletic that big changes may be coming to the Premier League. And I'm going to read this tweet directly from The Athletic's FC account, The Athletic FC. Exclusive. The majority of Premier League clubs want to introduce a hard spending cap, and the motion will be voted on Monday. The cap would allow clubs to only spend 5 times the commercial and broadcast revenue of the lowest teams in the division. So right at the same time, we have the American market being potentially opened up to a lot of these larger leagues in the world. The biggest league in the world is sort of taking a step closer to what MLS looks like with a salary cap. And this doesn't look like a salary cap like I always envisioned the Premier League having, some combination of baseball's luxury tax where you can continue to spend, but there is a penalty for spending more and more money. This looks way more like a hard cap, similar to the way the NFL has a hard cap, where the NFL's salary cap is a computation of players being guaranteed a certain amount of league revenue. This would tie the cap to the revenue of the lowest team in the division. Grayson, this feels seismic for the Premier League.
Yeah, it does feel seismic for the Premier League. I mean, obviously, like, Luton is not going to necessarily be able to spend like 5 times their revenue. But if it's adopted and it truly is a hard cap, the next question is like, what do they do with pro rel?
Right.
Like, are Wolves or Everton, pumped about being exposed to relegation when they can't spend more than 5 times what, I guess in like 3 years, like Wrexham's like marketing revenue is?
Right. Where they don't have a docu-series being produced by Deadpool in order to offset.
The next step beyond adopting a hard cap is abandoning pro rel,
It
or
has to be
having some modification of pro rel, because you can't be like, no rich owner is gonna like the petrostate of Qatar is not gonna subject themselves to the prospect of relegation,
right,
when they can't spend as much money as they want, essentially, on players.
Right. The comparison to this that I've made, and I think it's not exactly right, but imagine if you had the opportunity to buy a home and you say, okay, I've got the money to buy this house, or even worse, I have the down payment, I'm going to go into debt. But part of the deal with buying the home is that you were capped on how much maintenance you were allowed to spend on the house on a yearly basis. That you can buy this house for $300,000 or $400,000, but you can only do $10,000 worth of maintenance to it per year. And if the house needs a new roof or the basement starts to leak and it's going to exceed your allotment of repairs, well, then the roof just leaks and it ruins everything that you've put inside it and it ruins your investment.
Well, not just that. We're going to cap the amount of money you can spend on like repairs to your house.
Right.
And then also we can randomly rezone you to like the worst school district in Akron.
Yeah. Or worse, it's that not only like you can't repair your house, but if your house falls below a certain state of repair, it's seized by the government and someone else is put inside your house to see if they can fix it up better than you.
Or if your house sucks enough, we're going to move the Manson family next door.
Just if it's the Dahmer family, don't get involved in a barbecue, whatever you do.
Right.
Don't
just
accept
like
that invitation.
It's just like at any given time, not only can you not spend that much money on like upkeeping your house, but we might move like 7 serial killers next door. So you won't be able to sell it.
But if you start a true crime podcast, you'll definitely be able to move to a nicer house at some point, just based on talking with everybody around there. ProRel there has to be a modification to ProRel. Because and just as I say ProRel, we have joining us right now live via Zoom one Kevin Wallace. We're going to let him get situated and join the Zoom right here. What I will say, though, is that you can't tell people that if they have invested all this money, that then they cannot buy their way to safety or invest money to protect their own investment. So if you're really putting a hard cap on things, to me, yeah, you've got to do something with ProRel. The other thing, too, that's interesting about this is that if they're going to do this, they're now going to be competing in Champions League with teams that aren't subjecting themselves to the same restrictions.
Yeah.
That they're putting a hard cap on their top end. There's no cap, at least that we're aware of or that I'm aware of, that Bayern is going to have to be operating under, or PSG, or any
Real
of the teams
Madrid.
Real Madrid, Barcelona, any of the teams in Serie A. This seems, it's why when I read this, I was almost like, this has to be fake news. Because what you're talking about is you're talking about owners in the Premier League willingly devaluing their own investments, putting themselves at risk for relegation, and also, oh, by the way, putting themselves at a disadvantage at the continental tournaments that pay the majority of the bills for a lot of these teams. I don't know. Kevin, we mentioned ProRel, and much like the Candyman in the film series of the same name, you appeared out of nowhere. Premier League salary caps, best idea or simply great idea?
The inevitable idea, right?
Yeah.
Like at a certain point, Todd Bowley is going to spend, $3 trillion on transfers and realize, hey, this isn't going so good. I don't want to keep doing this anymore.
But then how do you subject Todd Bowley to relegation then if you tell him you spent however many billion he bought with Chelsea for, and now it's like, oh yeah, we're going to agree to some rules, which means you don't have to spend as much. That's great. Yes, but if you don't spend prudently, your club will go down and you will be powerless to stop it.
Yeah. So I think two things happen here. One, it reminds me of the time that the Premier League made like the right decision, the just decision to move the transfer window up to where it ended before the Premier League season started, which in my mind probably should be how that first window goes. And they sort of expected the rest of Europe to go along with them, and Europe didn't for 2 full seasons. And so the Premier League scrapped the whole idea. I could see it going like that they expect the Bundesliga to like this. They expect Italy to like this. And maybe the rest of France would get on board with this. But the other piece is, and I think I mentioned this in the Discord, I could see the Premier League altering the relegation rules, not scrapping them per se, but going back to the old Mexican model, which was what Mexico was doing. And I think Argentina and a couple other Latin American countries do this as well, which is they take a running aggregate, a 3-year running average of your points per game, every season. And at the end of one season, you take the running 3-year average, the 3 teams with the lowest points per game average are then relegated. So you let Chelsea or you let Everton even sit in the relegation zone for one season, hell, maybe even 2 seasons. But one half decent season in there is usually enough to keep them from being relegated. And that's how Mexico avoided their brands, as it were, from ever going down. In addition to a whole bunch of other franchise shenanigans where they would just buy franchises coming up and relocate them and whatever. But yeah, I think that might be one possible end to this game.
Or like some sort of a minimum points total, where as long as you hit a minimum points total, you are safe. And that maybe there are certain years where only one team gets relegated or no teams gets relegated, and it's just luck of the draw. My other question about this, and this might be more towards Grayson on this one, when you institute a salary cap, my understanding is that there is a players association in the Premier League, but they do not have a players union in the Premier League, similar to like we have with the MLSPA, where there is collective bargaining. Now, I don't know to what extent that exists in the UK, but in the US, I know that if a league tried to unilaterally impose a salary cap and there wasn't any sort of a collective bargaining with the players or the employees of the league, I feel like that would run afoul of any number of laws in the United States. I'm guessing those just don't exist in the UK or Europe.
I'll let Grayson answer.
It feels like they should, considering how much more, I don't know, is liberal the right word, or more pro worker they are in Europe?
I'll let Grayson answer here, but I just love the idea of like web developers. All the web developers are going to institute a salary cap. And it's just like, shit, I picked the wrong degree because every employer's agreed to only pay these guys $75,000 a year. And I was promised quite a bit more.
So I really have no idea how English labor law works. I know in some...
What kind of podcast are we?
I know in like some European countries it's like very different, where they have like sectoral bargaining and you can do secondary boycotts and stuff like that. But my understanding, though, as to soccer players specifically, is that like English, football association players are not unionized, that there is like some type of like players. I guess I don't recall what it's called, but it's more of like just like kind of like a loose like advocacy group where they just like advocate for player welfare, but their contracts and all that stuff are not subject to a CBA like in the US. Now, that does raise an interesting question, in that in the United States, a salary cap is only permissible, or so I hear, blah, blah, blah. Somebody told me this. I don't know if it's true. But that salary cap's only permissible because what I'm told is that there's a like labor exception to antitrust law in the US. And like, so otherwise that'd be price fixing.
Right.
Right. Because there's a market for labor. And if you agree with your competitors to set the price of labor, that's price fixing, and it's illegal.
Seems bad.
But you're allowed to do it in the context of and actually this came up in the NWSL with Olivia Moultrie, the young player who was like getting call-ups to the US, but the NWSL said, you're too young to play in our league. And she sued the league and said, this is an antitrust violation. This is a boycott. Like, if some team wants to sign me, the league can't stop them. And the court said, yeah. But the court said, yeah, because there was no union in the NWSL at the time. But like the NBA has an age minimum because there's a union. So you can do that because there's a union. I have no idea how English labor law or English competition law plays into that, but it will be interesting because, EU, England's not in the EU, kind of famously. But EU competition law is what came into play with the Super League decision recently.
Yeah. I am curious then if all of the super leagues in Europe decide to implement the same price ceiling or some sort of salary cap or maximum wage or something, that, yeah, they could very well run afoul of an antitrust thing, especially when you start getting, again, I don't know how any of this shit works, but it feels like if Italy and France are agreeing to suppress wages, some European Commission might not like that.
It feels like part of what makes this so hard to believe that the Premier League is going to do this is that the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, they can all get away with a salary cap because they're unquestioned leaders in their sport. They pay more money than any other place in their sport. You just accept the salary cap because where else are you going to go? I mean, you can go play baseball in Japan, but Japan doesn't pay as much as the United States does. So, you know, you have market dominance that allows you to dictate this. If everybody doesn't go with,
don't say market dominance, because because the U.S. doesn't have a market dominance standard, but the EU does.
Yeah,
so that's a whole thing we got to talk about.
But the idea is that, you know, if there's a maximum salary in,
or so I hear.
So you hear, when are you just gonna? Okay, spoiler alert: Grayson's a lawyer.
No,
breaking news.
Never heard of it.
Never heard of this.
He's not a lawyer. He's an attorney. Come on.
I don't know her.
That doesn't look like anything to me. I don't know. Just it feels like this needs to happen on some level because just the line is just going up and there seems to be no stopping the line. But also, if all these other leagues don't go along with the Premier League, it just seems like there's going to be a talent exodus to places that are willing to pay more.
Things do need to come to a head at some point, I think, because the anti-Super League stuff, for example, I was not a fan of the Super League concept, but I recognize that it was kind of the way the winds were blowing.
Yeah.
Things need to go in one direction or another. You're not going to be able to kind of snip around the edges forever and rein things in or pretend that, you know, it's still a bunch of steel workers versus union carpenters versus sheep farmers just having their Sunday football league games. I mean,
right.
The ship has sailed on any kind of the ship has sailed. It's a huge, massive industry with rich people involved at every level, and you can talk about what's the term they use?
Sporting merit.
Sporting merit, all you want. It's all driven by money. And, you know, that's me saying that as somebody who is for sure pro-rel sympathetic. I'm just describing how things are. I'm not describing how I wish things would be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always find too, you know, on one hand, you want labor to get as much value for said labor. I don't like the idea of a maximum salary for, you know, Cristiano Ronaldo or Leo Messi. They're the best to ever do it. There should be an unlimited cap
or
on
Ian
that.
Murphy. Ian Murphy should be able to have as much money as he wants. But we have a draft and we... Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we have a draft. He's sort of locked into a salary, all sorts of fun things. But at the same time, I recognize that some sort of level playing field in terms of compensation tends to generate more interesting and a more equitable playing field for sport. That that makes more sense, because if the Olympics is always the dream team versus, a group of college amateurs from Kosovo, it's not interesting at a certain point. But if there is the requirement that everybody is coming from the same level, or that teams have to compete with each other generally on the same level, it makes for a much more interesting competition. It allows for different tactics to flourish. It allows for different coaches to kind of shine. I mean, there's still a huge percentage of soccer fans, and I will gladly cast my ignorant vote in this direction. And I'll tell you, a lot of these top end managers aren't that good. They're just the ones that are like okay at managing the relationships of superstars. But like,
yeah, so even without a union, certain restrictions on player salaries and certain restrictions on player movement are okay, at least under US law, because there is an understanding that like the product of a sports league to some extent is the competition.
right.
And that there's an interest in the market in having some level of parity. You get more freedom having a players union, because then you can do like whatever you want with salary caps and stuff. You don't have to like justify every single rule. Like if there wasn't the MLSPA, MLS would have to justify every single rule it has regarding every single roster mechanism would have to be justified with some like, balancing of like pro-competitive and anti-competitive
Right.
effects.
And subject to 4 lawsuits every time a player is upset about
Right.
their
Yeah,
designation. Right.
It's this is why like I defend. So in the US, a big, and I don't want to, we're probably going a little too long on this topic at this point, but in the US, like in MLS, there's a complaint that like they keep expanding the playoffs. They expanded the playoffs, and it makes the regular season mean less. And a couple responses to it are, one, like in Europe, because like the middle of the leagues are so not dramatic, they keep adding European competitions for teams to qualify to
Yes.
to give some kinds of stakes outside of the very top or very bottom.
Right. Something different
of the
besides
table.
figuring out if you finish in 15th or 5th.
Right. Yeah. So, and then I lost the other point I was going to make, but
Compelling.
yeah. but like there is legitimate drama from having teams operating under the same rules.
Yeah.
I agree. What it does is it turns the game into something where your ability to manage the roster is also part of building a successful team, not just throwing more money at a problem and just spending your way out of situations. You know what this does in a weird way is it makes someone like a Chris Albright all of a sudden a very valuable commodity in a place like the Premier League, where this is a person that is used to building rosters with constraints, where you can't just go out to the market and sign the best forward or the best, center back in order to fix your roster hole. You have to go and you have to search for value in certain players, not simply just the blank check.
And you have players enter the league all the time, and they talk about the difference between their foreign league they came from in MLS, and invariably they mention that in MLS, like, there's no easy game. Like, there's no game where this is a guaranteed, because the players that MLS teams sign, by and large, come from the top. If they're not coming from like the top, like a top 5 league, they're coming from a top team in, whatever random country you want to mention. Like Pavel Bucha came from the one of the top teams in Czech Republic, right? So he gave an interview this past week, a week before, with a Czech podcast, and one of the things he said was, the teams are very close together, so there's no games where it's like you're obligated to get 3 points. Like, you have to fight every week in, week out to win the game. And that's, like, as a spectator, like, that's good.
Yeah.
Stressful, but good.
Right, but I guess, like, if you're like a neutral, like, it's more interesting than not, right?
Yeah.
It's good. It's going to be interesting. They say the vote is soon. I'm eager to see if this actually comes through. If this goes through, this is a seismic change for world football.
I don't think it will. My guess is that there will be a negotiation to get like more revenue share down the table.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. Allegedly, Manchester City is already in compliance with the rule as written. So,
which means the rule is meaningless then. At that point.
Which I find hilarious. But the other thing is, and maybe you guys already touched on this. This is my apologies for joining late. I think overall this is good for MLS, though. I think the more caps on other leagues, it starts leveling the playing field for MLS. That the potential
depends where they set the cap.
Of course. Right. And the cap will be, granted, much higher. But I think, in theory, the Premier League is about maxed out in terms of its commercial value. Its commercial value will probably increase with inflation or, with regular traditional market expansion. MLS has a lot more to grow. And I think if their owners, which are very wealthy and top to bottom match up very well, I think with Premier League owners, if they decide to start throwing some cash around and raise their cap to match the Premier League, I think it could be very interesting in the next couple of decades.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. And it's an interesting thing that we'll make this last topic before we move on to our game preview. Apple TV bidding for the rights to the Club World Cup. And you know what? The Club World Cup gets a lot more interesting if it isn't just petrol states funding unlimited resources into the top teams. And there's actually a pathway forward for MLS. Because I think this goes to Kevin's point. Once the Premier League sets a salary cap out there, then all of a sudden achieving parity with the Premier League, it's at least an attainable goal. There's a goalpost out there. Whether or not MLS ever reaches it, your mileage may vary. But it's not the end game now is no longer competing with a league where they spend unlimited amounts of money. It's now competing with a league that they spend a definable amount of money in. And that's kind of interesting to me. So watch this space coming soon to an Apple TV near you. You may be able to watch the Club World Cup. I think that's good for the league. I think that's good for FC Cincinnati. I think that's good for MLS. So it's on balance, it's been an up and down week for leagues like MLS between relevant sports and this, but you know what? That's what being a soccer fan in America is like. There's good weeks, there's bad weeks, and there's weeks that are just fucking strange. So this
Can't
is one
believe
of those
I
weeks.
missed relevant sports talk.
Oh,
damn.
You know what? You can have the joy of going back and listening. Anyway, that'll wrap it for segment 2. Stick around through the music. We'll be back in segment 3 to preview FC Cincinnati's return home. Finally, it feels like forever. Versus an improved Colorado Rapids team? Stick around. And we're back. I'm just taking hosting duties right now, Kevin. This is what happens when you don't show up.
Good.
We got a match to talk about this weekend. It's been a wild episode, but we're going to bring it home with a little match preview as only the postcast can do. We got the Colorado Rapids coming into town. This is not your father's or even your slightly younger siblings' Colorado Rapids team. They underwent a little bit of a makeover in the offseason, brought in Georgi Mihailovic after paying a king's ransom to FC Cincinnati for that bona fide offer that we made to him in the offseason. They're coming in on a 2-match winning streak, winning 3 of their last 4. The only blemish, a 2-2 draw to Miami in that space. Kevin, since you're the most recent joinee of the Zoom, how are we feeling going into this match now that the FC has gotten off its losing streak? And question number 2, will Aaron Boupendza be in the starting lineup when the announcer at TQL Stadium reads the 11?
Yes, but only because it'll be alongside Kevin Kelsy, and that's why it'll work. Otherwise, actually, that'll be my prediction. If Kevin Kelsy does not start, neither does Boupendza. If he does, Boop is up top. Now, I also don't think Kelsey's starting, so you go on that one. I will say this. I think Colorado's a hint of a paper tiger here. The two teams they beat, FC Dallas and San Jose Earthquakes, are two of the worst teams in the league. The draw against Miami always looks good. They beat LAFC before that, which is pretty good, I guess. That was in Colorado. Was that I think that might have been the snow game, right? Wasn't that the one that...
No, that was Utah.
That was Utah. Okay.
That was Salt Lake.
Salt Lake and LAFC was the snow game.
That's what it was. LA had a red card in that Colorado Rapids game. So I don't fear them as much, especially they've got to come to us. They got to play us in TQL Stadium. I like that. Sam Vines and Jonathan Lewis are both injured. So, you don't root for that, but it's positive for FC Cincinnati. I think we got this. Vibes are high. I think the offense is fixed. I think we are good to go.
Grayson, on paper, this seems like a pretty even matchup. Both teams come in on 15 points with a two goal differential to the positive. How do you see this matchup going for the FC? And where are we in the narrative if Aaron Boupendza doesn't start this game?
So, with if Boupendza doesn't start the game, I think that the narrative is that FC caved to all of Shakhtar's demands and was desperate to bring in Kevin Kelsy. No, but I think that there's kind of well documented hiccups with Boupendza. I don't know that him being out of the starting lineup 2 games in a row really changes the overall sense of how he is in the team. They still spend a lot of money on him. It's been less than a year since he's been with that team. I would think there would still be the hope that they'll get right, and certainly the incentive is to get things right with him.
Right.
And so we've seen him play really, really, really well. And so I think that the potential is there. I think that, so I guess the direct answer to your question is, where do we sit with Boupendza if he doesn't start this game? There's still the question of what's going on with your DP, that he's not starting games when your team doesn't have anybody really, except for Lucho, producing on offense. But I wouldn't say
Kubo erasure right there, by the way.
That's true. I wouldn't say that it's he needs to go, by any means territory.
I am curious. We didn't really talk about this on Monday. Is there a thought that him being left out of the starting 11 on Sunday, was that a message sent to Boupendza, or was it a just we're looking for anything to spark this team? Because there were some comments from Pat Noonan that if you squinted hard enough, you could possibly piece together that Boupendza isn't doing what they're asking him to do, in terms of when he said about, we need players that work together, we need offenses to do, X, Y, and Z. I don't know. I don't know that we considered that possibility on Monday, that it was.
I don't think we get nearly enough information from the team to make that determination.
Yeah.
It's the amount of information you get regarding tactics, or what anybody wants to do, or how anybody's doing in training. It is dwarfed by any other sport in the US.
It'd be really funny though if on one of those talking tactics videos that Dom Kinnear or Kenny Arena just would have casually slipped in, And this run right here that Corey Baird make, yeah, that's why Lucho got benched last week, because he doesn't make this run right here. And then it's like just slipped in there to see if anyone's watching.
And maybe the thinking is like, if you don't ask the right questions, we're not going to give you the right answers. But
the Bill Belichick school of press conferences.
But like, to be honest, the amount of availability that people get is not that much compared to what is given in other sports.
You know what Pat Brennan should do? This is a free piece of advice for Pat Brennan, because I know he listens.
Yeah, he wants that for sure.
Especially deep in the episode.
This deep in the podcast. Pat Brennan should try and pay other people from other media outlets who don't usually cover FC Cincinnati, like someone from Channel 5 or Channel 12. Just get the person who just has nothing to lose to show up at the press conference and ask the real hard question that he doesn't want attached to his name. So it's, hey, Pat Brennan from the Cincinnati Enquirer, Coach, talk to me and walk me through the decision to start Yuya Kubo for the second straight match. He's been playing real well. Talk about the good stuff he's doing. But then you get reporter B from WLWT. Coach, this is reporter B, WLWT. Was Aaron Boupendza benched in this game? And if so, what did he do to deserve the benching? And then it's like having a live action Twitter burner.
They should collaborate with they just agree, we're all going to talk about what's the most interesting topic in this press conference.
Yeah, just hammer away.
Whoever goes first is going to ask this question. The next person is going to ask this follow-up. The person after that is going to ask this follow-up. And we're going to get an actual meaningful answer to the question at some point. We're just going to, instead of getting a lot of guys just aren't always Monterey just scored. Guys aren't just always making the final pass or finishing in front of goal the way that we would want to, and it's you just want to see people playing more cohesively. You're gonna, instead of 5 questions and you get 5 of those answers.
Yeah,
you're gonna ask one question, all the necessary follow-ups, and you're going to get one useful piece of information in this press conference.
Or that's the first question that's asked. Yeah, we're going to go to Laurel Failer from the Queen City Press. Laurel, what's your question? Yeah, following up on that last question, who isn't making that run and who isn't the one that's finishing in front of net? Can you please put a specific name to that?
And Coach, is your entire plan for improving the offense to that the finishing will improve?
Right. What is the team doing differently in training this week to improve finishing? What does Boupendza need to do in order to earn his starting job back? See,
this is why they need more people in these press conferences. Just there needs to be a few more voices in this, because I do want to get some some shithead questions. Have you thought about having them run laps to see if that makes things better?
Now I want to be clear. We're not going to be that.
No.
None of us is going to be there. We wouldn't even be there if they invited us.
Yeah.
Maybe even less likely to show up than at that point.
Yeah, it feels like a trap at that point.
But we got what
in the Tunnel Club.
We have 4 or 5 local TV stations. You got 700, you got 1360.
Good job. 1530's the other one.
1530, you got NPR. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, Tana Weingartner.
She's a crew fan. She's not going to ask any
crew fan Tana Weingartner. Seems to be very interested in what's going on around FC Cincinnati. Go to a press conference. Ask
City
a question.
Should be on there. Yeah.
Ask a question. More
Street
interesting
vibes.
than just counting. How many pages are in a media guide. As if that means anything.
The person from Street Vibes, their only question is, would you like to buy a Street Vibes?
City Beat, Cincinnati Magazine. There's people. They can go.
UC and Xavier, I'm sure, have student newspapers. They
should
be
invite them.
Yeah.
Give them, their interns. Give them experience.
Yeah, there's got to be a kid in a journalism school who wants Pat Brennan's job. Come on, baby. Open competition. Let's see it. What kind of questions you got?
If you want to go for the throne, you can't do that sitting at home. Many people have said, many people have noted. So Colorado Rapids, they're a little better. How much better? I don't know. I guess we'll find out.
It shouldn't matter.
No.
I don't care how good they are. We should not be worried about the quality of our opponent. We should be expecting
we're talking
results and execution. Like our problem is ourselves. Our problem should not be our opponent.
No, we're focusing on ourselves. This is when we play our game should be enough to win. We play our game. We don't play our opponent's game. Fortress status. Where are we at on TQL Stadium as a fortress? Do we need to win this game to maintain fortress status?
We are monitoring fortress status.
Sure. A home field advantage in MLS feels inherent unless you have Jared Nykamp at the helm. So
right.
Or Pat Noonan, apparently. We've won one game at home, right?
This year.
Yeah.
Overall, I think he's got a solid home record.
That Cavalier game's doing a lot of work, too.
We lost. Didn't we have like a worse home record in 22 as well?
We did have a weird home record in 22. That's right.
Yeah. So I think people are asking questions about Pat Noonan's ability to win at home.
Fortress status.
Does Pat Noonan hate the Bailey? I mean, we have to ask.
Maybe he should spend less time admiring home runs and more time admiring his team scoring goals at home.
I'm hoping that like his anger over the being there with a Philly loss, that just on behalf of his buddy, Chris, that the Philly is rubbed off on him a little bit, and he's going to take some revenge on someone for that.
He's a Cardinals fan too.
He's got to be a Cardinals fan.
This can't be good for him.
Yeah. I just assume everyone involved from that is from Philly. I assume that the Philly is rubbed off. Does he use the phrase John, though, is what I really need to know. That would be really...
I would say certainly not.
Yeah.
I hope not. Boy.
I hope he doesn't like St. Louis pizza. We've never really had that conversation with him either, but Provel cheese is disgusting.
Get him.
What's his thoughts on ravioli?
Yeah, fried, toasted, where are we at? All right, let's predict this game. We've been yammering along long enough. I'm going to start with you, Grayson. How do you see this turning out? And have you given an interview to any St. Louis media outlets where you've predicted a loss as well?
Well, no St. Louis media outlets. Also, no Colorado media outlets.
Oh, wherever. It's the same difference. The same place.
No, apparently it went so poorly for Atlanta last week that nobody from Colorado
has reached out.
Thought about reaching out. It's got nothing to do with the fact that Colorado probably has much of a less robust fan media ecosystem than Atlanta does.
They play them at Commerce. It's the equivalent of them being the Mason of Denver.
How dare you? I'll have you know that I am following, and they follow me back, Holding the High Line podcast. I ran into them once in a press box. They were very nice. So
why wouldn't you be Holding the Mile High Line? That would be so much better.
I think
why not just Mile High Line?
The Mile High Line.
I mean, Holding the High Line's like a soccer thing, but
that's wholly a soccer thing. Like, people understand that a high line is a soccer thing, so then you make a high line a Colorado thing, Mile High Line, instead of just an entirely a soccer term, which is nothing specific to do with your team. Like fuck your team. FC's gonna tie them 1-1.
I really like that the Post is giving this advice.
I didn't pick the name.
No. I suggested like 10 better names for this podcast that were all just summarily ignored. And
also, the podcast is the Cincy Postcast.
Okay, but I'm just saying in general, the umbrella under the Post.
Yeah,
which
I had nothing to do with this.
The more generic it is, the more I like to mentally take credit every time the Washington Post and the New York Post break news, and somebody says the Post breaks this news. I think, look at us go.
All right, anyway, we're going to tie 1-1.
1-1 tie.
Kevin,
gross.
Where stand you?
2-1 FC Cincinnati, Kevin Kelsy, header to win it.
I love that. I would love that for us. The Kevin Kelsy immediately scores a goal.
To be clear, I don't even know if he's allowed to be in the country legally right now, but that's my prediction.
I'm not sure we're allowed to know his name.
As long as we don't pay him, he's not really working, right? So as long as he agreed to do the match for free.
He is 19. Like, we aren't far enough removed.
He is a college intern. What if he plays as a college intern?
Team admin subbing in.
Right. He's not being paid, but he's getting valuable experience and exposure for his work.
It's a foreign exchange program with UC. Yeah.
It's his it's what do they call that? When you're in your college your dad, what do they call that when in UC they the big like externship, but not the capstone.
Yeah. No, that's
so I have an idea. What if we say, because I hear he has like a formidable frame. What if we say this is like a Encino Man situation?
So we're already calling him a caveman.
We found this giant unfrozen caveman.
What's the name of the dude that's just
He
like
has
absolutely...
no papers. He has no country.
Who's the dude that's absolutely wrecking like FCC2? That's like 19.
Stefan Chirila. We just say he's Stefan Chirila.
Just say he's Stefan Chirila. That's like
put a little red
he looks like.
curly wig on his head.
Yeah, he looks like a Stefan. That'll work. I am going to say for this game, I'm going to say the FC wins 3-0. The return of Roman Celentano, the clean sheet. I'm going to say we get a goal from Yuya Kubo. I'm going to say we get a goal from Lucho Acosta. And I know this is going to sound strange coming from me. I think Corey Baird scores his first goal of the year at TQL Stadium and gets the monkey off his back finally, as we say. So those are my 3 goals. If you want to parlay those 3, you will have plenty of money to subscribe to our Patreon, plenty of money to spend at Cincy Shirts, plenty of money to go and have a nice night out at Street Side. So if you do that, you can thank me later when you see me. Anything else?
Yes. It's called a co-op. I needed to look it up.
Co-op. There we go.
Because UC invented it. Or at least they claim it. So hell yeah.
Many people noting that before UC, the term cooperation just didn't exist.
Didn't exist. It's pretty wild.
Grayson,
People didn't like grow their own groceries and sell them at the market before
Never
UC.
happened.
Nope.
Never happened.
Not once. Anything else for the good of the order, gentlemen?
God, no.
Oh, no.
No. Tom seemed a little taken aback when we noted that San Diego is our new biggest rival. I don't think we explained that properly to him.
Well, we shouldn't, ever.
They're going to learn. You know, I had this thought earlier today. They're going to take a player of ours in the expansion draft, and it's going to be a holy war against them when this happens.
In the words of Robert De Niro in Cape Fear,
go fuck yourself, San Diego.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Cincy Postcast, which is a production of The Post Cincy. You can check us out at thepostcincy.com for all of our written content, as well as links to our social media. You can follow us on Twitter, and as well, you can join us on our Discord server. You can find links to that server both in this episode description as well as on our website. That is where most of our conversations are going on. We have a lovely community there talking about FC Cincinnati, MLS, anything and everything else and everything in between. We also want to give a huge thanks to Jim Trace and the Makers for providing all of the music you've heard throughout this episode. They're an amazing local Cincinnati band. Again, more information about them is in the description of this episode. And if you enjoyed what you listened to, and you've made it to the end, so I'm going to assume you liked it, or you just can't reach your stop button, please like us, review us, subscribe to us wherever you are getting your podcasts. That is going to be really, really helpful. But more importantly, share this with a friend. A personal recommendation helps spread a podcast so much further. So please share this if you know somebody in your life who's an FC Cincinnati fan, an MLS fan, somebody that you think would enjoy this. Pass it on over. Thank you so much again for listening. It blows me away that people continue to listen to us, and thank you so much again.